Hello, and welcome to Chapter 1, Getting to Know the Work Area. I wanted to briefly address resetting the default preferences. I have Adobe Photoshop already in my Launchpad on Windows. First, you must click the Adobe Photoshop icon, and then immediately hold down Control plus Alt plus Shift on Windows or Command plus Option plus Shift on a Mac to reset the default settings. So I'm just going to go ahead and select Yes, although I've not made any changes to my preferences file. So I'm going to say Yes, and then it's going to go ahead and launch Adobe Photoshop. So in order for Photoshop to run as smoothly as possible in a way that's customized for your particular workflow, you need to set up your preferences to your liking. What are Photoshop preferences? I'm going to select the blue button that says New File. A new dialog box will appear, and I'm going to select the default Photoshop size option, and then on the right-hand side, I'm going to select the Create button. And now, this is the default screen that appears for Adobe Photoshop. So the minute that I start making changes to these panels, so I'm going to say that I don't want the color, the swatches, or the gradients and patterns to show up. If I come over here to this lined menu bar and I select this, I can go down here to the bottom and close this entire tab group. Also remove this Learn Libraries and Adjustments, and I can go ahead and I can close this entire tab group. And all that appears now is this panel with layers, channels, paths. I also have some panels, but they're only icons and they are docked to my layers panel. So I have, if I hover over it, I get the history, and then I also get the properties panel. Now, because I've made changes to the interface, the next time that I launch Adobe Photoshop, it will remember that I only want the layers, the channels, and the paths panel open. So that is now stored in a preferences file. So if your Photoshop is ever running hinky, meaning it's not running effectively or efficient, or there's something that is slowing down your Photoshop system, you will want to reset your preferences. You will do that with any of the Adobe Creative Suite's products, Illustrator, InDesign, Photoshop. They all will reset the same way. Over on the left-hand side is our toolbar. If I click on the double chevron, the toolbar now is in a double column, and this is my preference. So one of the things that I like to do when I'm in Adobe Photoshop is if you hover over any of the icons, it gives you this little graphic that explains what the tool does. But notice right here, it's called the Move tool, and in parentheses is the letter V. The letter V is what you will select to get to the Move tool. You'll eventually become very proficient, and you'll select the letter V, and notice it highlighted that I wanted the Move tool. If I selected the letter B, like boy on my keyboard, B, it automatically took me to the Brush tool. I have memorized all of these hotkeys, this is what they're called, are hotkeys, so that I can proficiently, easily get to the tool that I wanted instead of taking my mouse and dragging it over there. If I wanted to go ahead and open up the documents for the Chapter 1 Start PSD, I would go to File, and I would choose Open. And I would say on my computer, because that's where my files are currently. They're on my computer. Now there's a couple ways that we can do this. I can cancel this. I can also say Browse and Bridge. And it will find the folders on my desktop. And the folder that I'm looking for is the one that says Photoshop _ CIB _ 2022. I can double click on this, and here are the lessons, and here's lesson 01. And all that you have in this file is the 01 Start PSD file. So to open this up in Photoshop, I can right click, and I can say Open with Adobe Photoshop. I can also double click on this, and it will launch Adobe Photoshop as well. Over here on the right hand side is my layers panel, and if I double click on this, it will open up this entire tab. This file has two layers. The first layer is the one that is visible right now, and that's because of the eyeball. The second layer, which is called ribbons, is on a transparent background. And if I right click, I can make my thumbnails larger. So I have to right click in this blank gray area to get that dialog box. So I'll right click and I'll say large thumbnails so that I can increase this. If I turn off this eyeball, you can see that we have this checkerboard pattern. This checkerboard pattern reflects a transparent background. If I click on the eyeball for the ribbons layer, you can see that we have a banner that says happy birthday that was already created for us. So this particular file has two layers, a rose layer, which is this background layer, and then we have the ribbons layer, which is on top of the rose layer. The layers go in cascading order. This one is on top of the rose layer. I'm going to turn off the eyeball for the ribbons layer, and I'm going to come back and select the rose layer by selecting in this area right here next to the word rose. So now this layer is selected and is available for me to use. If I use the zoom tool, which is the letter Z, and I can either just drag, and notice it gets a heck of a lot larger, and right now it's at 12,100%. And if I hold down my space bar, notice I get the hand key. I automatically just held down my space bar and I can move around in my file. Now these little squares, what they represent is 1 pixel of data that's in this file. This is 1 pixel of this rose image, and we are zoomed out to 12,100% of this file size. Now, if I want to go back to this file size, I can either just hit Fit Screen or 100% or Fill Screen. You can try any of these to get you back to be able to have the full view of this layer. But remember, we have only 3 panels that are open. And if I select any of these tabs, it will toggle me between these tabs. So I have the Layers panel open, but they want us to use the Adjustment panel. We can also open a panel because they're saying the Adjustment panel, but I don't have the Adjustment panel available. To find that, I would go under Window, and right here is Adjustments. Any layer that has a check mark next to it is already open. So I'm going to select the Adjustments, and now it is available as a panel above my Layers panel. You can move panels around, so I can take this libraries and I can drag it out, and I can take the learn and I can drag it out, and then I can select the X, and that will remove this panel from my view. If I wanted it back, I would go to Window and I would look for Learn and I would look for Libraries. I can also take this adjustment layer and I can take my Layers panel and I can just drag this until I see this blue line that goes all the way around the adjustment panel. And then I will let go, and now these are docked together. Now I have the channels in the paths layer, and I don't really need them, so I could go ahead and close this tab group. So now I have my adjustments layer and I have my layers panel. So 2 different panels. I'm going to select my adjustments layer, and each one of these icons does something different. So if you hover over them, should give you a tooltip as to what these icons do. All right, so the one that I'm looking for is brightness and contrast, and it's the very first one that looks like a partly cloudy sun. So I'm going to select that, and then this properties panel pops up, and it's just telling us to move the brightness slider all the way to the right until it gets to 98. You can also type in the number, so I can highlight that and type in 98. And then I can also do tab, and it will drop me to the next form field, and I can type in the number 18. What this did was this brightened the image. Now I have this double chevron right here, and I can go ahead and I can click that, and it will go ahead and close that Properties panel. If I go back to my Layers panel, notice above the Rose layer now, I have this new adjustment layer. So this adjustment layer only affects what is below it. So the only thing that it affects is the brightness of the rose. And it does this without permanently altering the actual pixels because we used an adjustment layer. I can go ahead and double click on this thumbnail right here, and the brightness and contrast property panel will appear again. And I have the ability to adjust the slider. Now, if it's in the way and you can't really see what's going on, you have the ability to move this around. So I can move this around and say, yeah, I kind of like that better, and man, I'm not for sure about that. That looks good. And you have these options right here. This is a clipping path. We'll get to learning about this in an upcoming chapter. And this is to preview what it was before. So this will take me right back to where I was before. And this is the undo. And this is the turn on and turn off the eyeball, so you can turn off that layer. And this will throw the adjustments that were created into the trash. Notice if I select the trash, it says, do you really want to delete the brightness contrast layer? I'm going to say yes. And if you notice, it is now gone. So to apply that again, I would select Adjustments, click on this, and those values were 98, and I'll just do Tab, and 18, and I'll just close that, go back to my Layers panel, and there you go. And I can turn off the eyeball to see the adjustment, and it was only made to the rose layer. So I'm going to go ahead and make the ribbons layer active by selecting the eyeball, and it says to select the Eyedropper tool in the Tools panel. So the Eyedropper tool is over on the left hand side, and it is the letter I. The letter I. So if I hover over this, you will see that it is the letter I. Many of these tools you will use over and over again, so you will want to make sure that you start to memorize these hotkeys. So it's just the letter I on my keyboard. So I have the Eyedropper tool selected, and I'm going to just go ahead and hover over this Happy Birthday ribbon, and I'm going to just click with my mouse and sample that blue color. Nothing happened because I was on the adjustment layer. I needed to be on the ribbon layer. I need to select this layer. I have my eyedropper, and I'm going to go ahead and just select by clicking with my mouse on this blue banner with the eyedropper tool. And notice that the foreground color changes in my tool panel, and I could also go and Window, Color, and here's the color panel as well on the right hand side. I'm just going to go ahead and collapse this. So I'm going to select Close Tab Group. To set the unit of measurement, it says that we can choose Edit, Preferences, Units, and Rulers. But I'm going to show you a different way that you can do this as well. If I go to View and I say Rulers, right now I just brought up the Rulers panel that goes all the way around my image. If I right click in here, it is being displayed as pixels, but we can also change our unit of measurement for the ruler to inches. Okay, this is one way we can do this without having to go to our edit and then scrolling down and finding preferences, and then looking for the units and rulers. So right now it says that our rulers is in inches, and that's because I went ahead and I changed this by right clicking in my ruler, and I can change this to the unit of measurement that I want. When you're working in pixels, most of the time this would be for web development work, and when you're working in inches, this would be for print work. And then you have other units of measurement, but the two most popular are pixels and inches. All right, I'm going to select the rectangular marquee in the Tools panel. If you hover over that, it's the letter M. So I'm just going to select M. And then it tells you that you're going to draw a rectangular marquee tool to create a selection about 3/4 of an inch tall and 2.5 inches wide, ending at the right edge of the card. You can drag this out. So I can drag this, and notice as I'm dragging, it's giving me the width of 2.59 inches and the height of 0.7.2. But I want it to be 0.75 and close right there. And then I also want this to be 2.5 inches wide. So then I need to drag that back in. You do have the ability to move this around. So if I select inside of here, I have the ability to move this around, okay? You need to be inside of here. And so now I have the ability to move it over to the right-hand side. And notice when I get to the border, the pink border, it snaps to that. The border around this, the selection, is called Marching Ants. And it's animated so that you can see it more easily. It's asking us to select the brush tool, which is the letter B. And notice we have these options up here at the top. And right now it's set to about a size 13 for the brush. So I can open this up and I can choose to move the slider to make this about 65 pixels. I can also always type in these and then just select tab to move to the next selection option. You also have the ability to look through the general brushes. So it does tell us that we want to select a soft round, 65 pixels. And to close this, we're just going to go ahead and hit enter, or that will close that. And then we'll go ahead and we'll paint. And notice it's painting inside of this rectangular marquee. But here's what I wanted to point out to you. Notice that it put it on the ribbons layer. But let's say, well, I don't want it on the ribbons layer because what if I wanted to move this around now? I'm not going to be able to do that. So how would I do this? This is where the history panel comes in really great. I'm going to go back one state to where it says Move Selection, and it will automatically undo the change that I previously made. So that's what the history panel is for. And over here on where we have our layers panel, if you go down here to the bottom, you'll have these different icons. And the icon that we're looking for is the one that's next to the trash can. And if you hover over it, it says Create New Layer. Well, I actually want to create a new layer because I'd actually like to be able to have control over this layer. So now I'm going to go ahead and paint that. And it's on its own layer. And now I can name this layer whatever I would like. I'm just going to name this layer Blue Bar. I know it's not very original, but it's the only thing I could come up with at this time. And then I'm just going to hit enter. So now I have the ability to take the move tool and I can move this anywhere that I want because I put this on its own layer. This is the beauty of layers in Photoshop and one of the reasons why people love using the software. I'm going to select my polygonal lasso tool, which is the letter L. And notice with this tool, we have, if I hold down with my mouse, we have the lasso tool, the polygonal lasso tool, and the magnetic lasso tool. Well, I want the polygonal lasso tool. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over to my blue bar, and I'm going to select Alt, and this gives me the minus sign. And I'm going to select the top corner, and I'm going to drag in and make like a triangle. And then I'm going to hit enter. And what it did was it went ahead and removed a portion of my banner. But as you can see, I really didn't do too well. So I have these marching ants right here, and I want to get rid of them. I can go to select, deselect, but notice it's Control D, and you'll want to remember this because you will use this all the time. So Control D, which will deselect. Well, I need to zoom in. I'm going to grab the zoom tool, which is the letter Z, and I'm going to zoom in, zoom, zoom, zoom. And I can see that I didn't really do a very good job painting because I've missed some spots right here, but also I didn't really do that well of a job. What I could do is the eraser tool. I'm going to use the eraser tool. And I'm just going to kind of click. And if I hold down the shift key, I can go ahead and get a straight edge there. And it doesn't look really good, and that's because I'm zoomed out pretty far. And I can also grab the brush tool, which is the letter B, and I can use the left angle brackets on my keyboard, which is next to the letter P, and it will resize my brush tool, and I can just now paint any place that I actually missed. And that was the, oops, it looks like I missed over here as well, so I can paint that. And I hold the shift key. So if I click and hold the shift key, I can paint in a straight line. Now you're probably wondering, okay, well, wait a second, why is it painting outside of this? That's because my brush is set to a soft brush, and I really want it to be just a hard brush, a hard round brush. So I'll select a hard round brush, and then I'll select, oops, I'll select the brush tool. I'm going to make sure that I have a hard round brush. And I'll select and hold the shift key, and it's close. So I'm just going to do Control minus or Control 0, and that'll bring me back to my fit-in screen. And I can close my history panel by selecting the double chevron. Now I'm going to select the type tool, which is the letter T, and I'm going to go ahead and up here at the top we have where we would have our font, and if it's a regular bold italic, and we have the size. So I'm going to change this to Minion Pro, so I can just highlight this and type in Minion. Let's see if it comes up. Minion Pro Italic, that's what I want. And I want it to be 32 points. I'm just going to type in 32 and select Tab. And it also tells you that you can, if you hover over the letter T right here, you have these little scrubbies where you can slide your mouse and you can set the unit of measurement. So I'm going to select the Swatches tab. So I'm going to go to Window, and I'm going to select Swatches. Or you can go ahead and select Swatches, and I'm going to look for the ones that are pastel, and it says yellow, so I'm just going to select this yellow. You can choose any color that you like. And then I can go down into my text, and I can start typing, and I'm going to type my name. I'm just going to type my name. If you're having a little bit of trouble, you might double click on there to remove the lorem ipsum. So I'm going to type my name. I'm going to select the check mark that says OK. And I'm going to just close this color swatch panel. So I'm going to close the tab group. And notice it put it on its own layer. Automatically, when you select type, it puts it on its own layer. Now if I select the Move tool, which is the letter V, V like victory, so if I hover over this, you'll see it's V, I have the ability to move this around, and it's trying to center it for me in here. So now I want to save this. I'm going to do File, Save As, and I'm going to choose Save on your computer, and I'm going to put this in my Photoshop folder, the Lessons folder, the Lesson 01, and I'm going to name this with a capital L, the number 1, a hyphen, and then your name, and then choose Save. And OK. Now I already have the Adobe Assets open, but if you don't, you can always type in Adobe Assets. I already have that open. I want to make sure that I'm in synced files. I'm going to create a new folder. I'm going to name this Chapter 1 and select Save. I'm going to select that Chapter 1 folder. So I'm inside of that Chapter 1 folder. I'm going to select Files. I'm going to go to my Photoshop Lessons folder. Inside of the Lessons, the 01, the L1, and then my name, and I'm going to open that. And you can see that it's uploading that file. I've successfully uploaded the file. I'm going to click on it. Over here on the right hand side, you can see I have a layers icon. These are all the layers that I created when this image. On the right hand side, there's an icon that says get link. You'll go ahead and copy this link, and then you'll go ahead and paste that into the textbook lesson 1 assignment in Canvas. And I look forward to seeing your work. Thank you.